little Steffi, you know. I'm now a game developer. I'm a narrative director. We're working on African-focused games because I was very frustrated with the fact that there were no black female protagonists in video games, and I was like, wow, how I love it. So that's what we're doing. I'm a game developer. I also am a script doctor, so if people have got scripts that are a little wonky, they bring it to me, and then I try to perform some kind of, you know, story surgery on them. I write comics. I've written for Marvel and DC.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very instant comic girl.
That is.
No, don't be trying to slide that in. We need to know issues. We need to know characters.
Right.
Because
That's what I
I'm a
want to
DC
hear
comic
about.
girl all
Yeah.
the way. Okay.
Well, I think my proudest moment was when I wrote Moon Girl and she got to hang out with Miles Morales and X-Men. That was my favorite. And they were like, we're bringing Moon Girl back. Can you do something? I was like, bring it in. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So yeah,
That's
that
the
was
best.
one of my favorite moments, and also creating a black woman Captain America, another one. Wild, I had to deactivate my Twitter for a while because people were like, "You're ruining comics and your posts."
Black women.
I had to deactivate for a while because I was like, "Oh, that's a lot of hate over a comic." Right. It's not possible. You have to have a life. Yeah, and I write children's books, and I love building libraries for schools that don't have libraries. Yeah, that's me. I'm a reader and a writer, and I love stories.
Yes, that's dope. Yeah, I know. That's dope.
So I'm gonna ask a few questions to set the stage, but I know the room has a lot of questions, so I'll try to leave some telling space for the everything. So I wanted to start at the beginning with the author's note, because it was a little spicy there, which was like Afrofuturism is not for African people, which was like, ooh, drop the mic on that one. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the author's note and why it was important for you to set that context and like which years was that author's note for?
So I think at the time I was working on a South African comic called Kwezi, and a lot of the time when we were doing it at the time, Black Panther had come out, and I mean the film and Kwezi, there were a lot of parallels because Kwezi uses, you know, somehow characters wear a lot of just like traditional clothes, and people were like, oh, like Black Panther, and I was like, can exist in the same plane, not the same though. And people kept on bringing up Afrofuturism, and so I was like, well, I want to engage with this, but firstly I want to know what it is. And so I was like, okay, what's the source? And then of course when I found out Mark Derry was the one who came up with this term, I was like, come on, white man. But also I was like, okay, but I understood that we can all be fantastical and amazing, but our point of view is different, right? And I was just like, I love Afrofuturism. I write some Afrofuturist stories for like comics, but this is not Afrofuturism. Again, I don't know what it is, but just from, it had a very, very specific point of view. And so I was like, let me just say it outright, because I think that was when like Afrofuturism was, you know, everybody was saying Afrofuturist, and I was like, you guys don't even know what you're saying. Now you're just making stuff up. And I wanted to be very clear. I was like, I love all sorts of like, you know, futuristic stories, but I think we can all have our own names and exist in this space and appreciate each other. So really I wrote it because of the people that kept on going, oh, I like Black Panther. And I was like, not so much, love it, but not in the same vein. So, and also my publisher also said Afrofuturism, and I was like, and I said to her, you can publish this, but I have to write this author's note. Like I have to say, listen, you know, we have different names, we have different points of view, and it informs how we write the stories and how the stories come out, but I love it all the same. Yeah.
I feel like Medea Corafor would be like right there with you, because she's got a lot of spicy takes on this.
Yeah, she's got African Jujuism, African futurist, African futurist. And so I was like, let other people give names. I just wanted to say, this is the point of view. This is where this collection is coming from. I'm not interested in naming it. I believe other people can name it when they're ready.
I love that. And so a lot of the stories in the collection take from South African folk tales. And so I wonder why it's important to you to take from the past to drive this like future that you're building. It reminded me of St. Copa, like look backward
Yeah.
So I just wondered what that was for you.
I think my partner, she loves the Brothers Grimm, right? And I kept
Oh,
reading
I
all
could
of
feel
this,
it.
and I was like,
The dark.
it's dark.
You gotta get someone's legs
So
up. Cut their legs
I don't
off.
think it's considered crazy. No, I was like, it's influenced so much. There's a real history here, and I'm sitting with, I'm surrounded by amazing stories, amazing legends, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna do it, obviously I'm gonna do it the only way I know how to, right? Because we have stories about women that live in water and about people being taken by water spirits, and I was like, okay, there's already the language around vampires, werewolves, so I was like, I'm not going to try and reinvent anything. I'm just saying, what if there were werewolves? How would they exist in the Cape Town kind of context? And of course, the Cape Flats has got a huge gangsterism problem, and I was already like, Pax, come on. It's like, it's a boy who joins a gang. And immediately, those things I was like, I'm not going to recreate, the rules of this is what mermaids do. I was just like, how would they exist in this context? I already have the shorthand, so let me introduce these folktales this way and maybe second time around. Then I'll be like, okay, these are the actual rules of where I come from.
And so you've had a little bit of distance from this collection. So this year's the 6-year anniversary since you wrote this book.
but
You're not aging. The book is aging, but not you. And so I wonder, with that level of distance from the work, does it mean something different for you than when you originally wrote it? And what do you want readers to really take away from this collection?
I think it still means the same thing because I always feel like an intruder in these spaces. I feel like an intruder when I work in games. I just happen to be in spaces where being an African woman, a black woman, is just like I may be the only one, or I'm one of two, or we can count on one hand how many of us there are. Which is why when I wrote my first novel, I felt like I don't belong in literature. And so I wanted to read a book about a woman who grew up in Soweto and finds herself in this wild Cape Town with this incredibly violent history. I mean, nobody ever talks about the slavery aspect of what makes Cape Town, right? And so I
We
wanted
were
to
talking about it in the car.
Quick to bring
But
it
we're
up.
weird people.
Oh.
We're the South Africa, never slavery plus. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
How does the
We're niche.
on the
Yeah, there you go.
end up with?
Yes.
There is a reason.
Yeah, and so I always feel like an intruder, and every time I write a story, I'm like, man, I love this genre, I like these kinds of stories, but I just don't see me and my people in them, and so I was just like, I wanted to see my nephew who has got he runs away from home. I laugh at it now because we have a kind of cycle. Around December, I know he runs away from home, he's got mental health issues, he's also an addict, and I was just like, I want to write this kid into the story, which is what inspired No Strain End.
Like most people
Of
of
the list, so that was gonna be up there.
Yeah, so it was inspired by people that I love, and I was just like, well, you belong in books too. I want you to, if there's something that's based on the story, for you to watch a movie and go, I can relate. That could be me, because there are many times when I'm watching things and I feel like there's definitely a gap. I can sort of relate, but I just don't see myself in the stories. So I still feel the same way. I still feel like I'm an intruder. I don't know if I'll never not feel like an intruder. Yeah, but I still feel the same way about the stories and characters and why I did it.
We're gonna pause for them to introduce the next one.
Yes, okay. We're going to have the Master Phenotype, which is from Devon Hill. It's a 2022 vintage. And then when you taste it, you taste the red fruits and then a touch of black cherries and a hint of toasted oats. Pair beautiful with your beef fillets, but you're gonna have fruits. Okay. And
Oh no, I was at the bar and I was
Okay.
like, I don't want to interrupt, so I just got a glass of wine and I was like, of course I'm going to be the person who walks through the restaurant, walking in with my own
Oh, like Rihanna.
Yes. My partner's at the bar, she's working and she's like, you're not really going to walk in with the glass.
Yeah.
And I was like, you want me to leave it again?
Give me her card.
alright,
the red lovers are heavy.
Yes.
It gives me migraines, so I want to taste it. So I want to be amongst my own, but I also.
It's so funny because white wine gives me heartburn.
Oh.
And whenever it's hot, people are like, white wine, I'm like, white wine is going to show my age.
Every day is a new nail day.
You didn't do anything.
So the book is built out into 3 parts. The good, bad, the ugly. But the good starts with the murder. So, yeah, I mean, and we were talking earlier that we think that is the happy story.
I do believe it's a happy story. It's a liberation story. And it was inspired by a very good friend of mine, and she spends a lot of time just walking in Johannesburg, and she says her body is such a scene. You know, like people comment on her body.
Oh God, yeah.
And she's just like, she wishes sometimes she could just like commit a murder so people could focus on like the murder and not her body. And I remember saying to her, I'm going to commit your murder, and I'm going to make sure that I will commit your murder in a story. And for me, it was a liberation story. And so murder is liberating. In that story, yes.
I would say it's half of the story.
She murdered someone she cared for, not someone.
It was a man that she sees passing by, you know, when she goes to the taxi rank, and he was. I think
That's
that's
one.
right.
The first
That's
one
right.
is when she's like at the church retreat.
Oh, you guys are talking about Manoka.
Manoka.
Okay, let me come back. So that is also a liberation story, but the murder is.
I agree.
The murder is just an
Accident.
accident, and I feel like
Circumstantial.
whenever we come into our power, somebody loses it.
Yeah.
And especially men, right?
Oh, yeah.
I like this guy. And then it's like your idea of doing something like,
Oh, that makes
before I
sense.
had my power.
I thought he was just annoying, so.
Actually, it was a male life, right?
Aren't they all?
She visited the guy's house. He was kind to her. He shared the water, the sand, or whatever from the beach with her. Like,
So
this was the one story where the men were not trash.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but being nice. Right, but being nice is the baseline. Like, he should have did that stuff anyway. He still.
So these were.
But I saw that differently.
It wasn't genuine.
She murdered them.
Was it genuine?
Musician parents,
Or was
and
it a
one
means
she
to
made
an
a
end?
church. Absolutely. But even the nicest guys
The
get in the way of our
nicest guy.
liberation.
The nicest guy.
And
Even
it
our
wasn't
church.
accident. She didn't know
Right,
her
she
power.
didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And she also didn't know her power came from, below her waist. She
Right.
was like that.
Is that symbolic? Is that where we hold our
Power
power
to
below our
be-
waist?
I think
She didn't know.
I
So.
think so.
She didn't know where her
And
power
most of
was.
us had that
And
habit
because she
too.
loved him so much, she was like, well, I killed you, but I still want you to come with you to
Come
the
with
other
that.
place. That's
She thought it was a
like,
happy ending that they would maybe be together.
yeah.
Because there was that caveat that a man's
they
life
might
could be
come back.
saved. He
Yeah,
might come
they
back.
might
So
come
she
back.
took him with her.
Yeah.
She took him in some place, in like her mind or her spirit in some way.
Why didn't they want to talk about it within the family? Even if she became of age and the grandmother expected there to be a murder because it happened with her daughter.
I think, so I come from a family of traditional healers. They call us Southerners in this country. And for a long time, there were things I didn't understand about our family. And my mother was like, we're Christians, we don't do that anymore. And South Africa is very good at hiding our origins, hiding our we spend a lot of time standing around secrets in this country. We just we huddle around the secret and we forget that that secret is part of somebody's intrinsic, it's part of who they are. If we don't tell them, they don't know. I didn't know for a long time. I came from a family of traditional healers. Until I kept bothering my mother, I was like, your uncle, the man who's got the big tree on his property, and she was like, I don't know anything about a big tree, and I was like, there was a man. I was like, we went to see him. There was a big tree. And she was like, I don't know. no, we've never been to see a man with a big tree. As my father, he used to like just roll his eyes, and then one day he was like, just tell her it's okay. She comes from a family of traditional healers. This is why she's sensitive to some things. And that's all it was. And suddenly I understood myself a little better, and I understood my mental illness a little better. And my mom was just so annoyed that we're being reminiscent and we're going back to whatever. But my dad was literally like, you keep the secret, you keep her source away from her. And so a lot of people keep secrets from their kids, even though they know that it'll impede their lives.
I would say that families do that all the time.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They like to keep it close to the vest, and it's like, oh, this is going to change who I am fundamentally, but you just don't want to tell me.
And I guess it's a little more exaggerated if it's like, well, you're a mermaid, you should probably know that. But, you know, it's things that are important to who we are, whether it's, you know, the color of our grandmothers and grandfathers, or how we came into families, or the big family secret. Families just do that very well. And it always harms the person who's been kept in the dark.
Yeah, it does.
So a lot of your stories are based on like real life events taken to extreme. Something is like On the Run, where there's this like doctors who would experiment in parts of South Africa. And I looked at the room and I was like, oh, he got off. He got completely got off. He has private clinic.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he has private clinics. I'll send an article about it around. But there's like stories that are based on it. So I
He was
wonder.
called Dr. Dick. He used to, during apartheid, he used to experiment on black people. They wanted to build African super soldiers. Like every time I look at science fiction, I'm like, we've been having it. And he basically was also trying to sterilize the black population. But the man, people say he's a brilliant heart surgeon. But he'd experimented on people, and he still practices as a heart surgeon now. And so On the Run wasn't so far away from reality that you never know who your neighbor is, who your boyfriend's father is, and then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm living with the monster. It's one of the things about. So I was born in the 80s, so I grew up in the state of emergency. And being able to sit at a dinner table with people and hear people talk about where they were during apartheid.
Wow.
It's why I keep my circle very small and black. I don't ever want to sit in somebody's home at the dinner table and hear their parents talk about where they were or what they were doing during apartheid, because it's very common to just sit at a table with ex-murderers or people who are now mercenaries or whatever. It's just people got away with it. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission just happened. We all kumbaya, and we forgave people who didn't ask for forgiveness.
Right. That part. Or don't plan on it
You
either.
can't undo the fact that they were murderers, but they're here. You know, in society, they have wine farms. They you know, it's like they're everywhere.
We do know.
We do.
Yeah. And so On the Run, people are like, oh my God, that's such a crazy story. I'm like,
Like,
oh,
is it? I thought it was so like permeates all of the like minority experiences that I heard. Like they do it all the time with women in prisons. They do it all the time with different populations, Native American population, like Mexican American. Like it's just such a easy way of controlling the populace.
yeah. And they get away with it. I think that's what's so wild. And when I started looking into just where else in the world it was happening, I was like, what is actually
Where is it not happening?
There is a side effect to this that may be bad at the time because Nola Zibota doesn't know how strong she is. But then she joins this group of people and they all have powers. And that's where the story came from. I had to imagine that something good came of these people that were experimented on. Some of them were just like thrown into areas with these wild animals. Like there's so many missing people in family trees in South Africa. It's actually a joke.
So I want to pause and experience this next course if you want to
Okay.
if you want to get a little bit background on the course.
Alright, we're now having local zeka. So it's your beef fillet served with the creamy and mushroom risotto. So served, it's more like a traditional staple. You know when you go to a ceremony, traditional ceremony, served is going to be there. It's a must be there. We're serving it with the beef cricket ball on the side, broccoli sticks, some sugar snaps, and some peas. And then on top of it, we have a crispy cake. You also have the chocolate bowl. For you, Mrs. Salmon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna open it up for the group's questions, but I'm a process person, so I wanna know, like, what's the ambiance when you're writing? What are you listening to? Who are you reading or not reading? Like, what gets you in your writer?
So when I'm writing, I don't read. But I watch a lot of Hollywood movies.
Emma is your person.
I know. I really want to talk to you after this because I got some very, very specific questions.
So movies, like when I'm feeling sad, or I watch horror movies and they cheer me up. Because it's just like,
Yes.
What's your trauma?
as a psychologist, I was like, really like whatever scary demonic kids exist in these films, it'll never be as horrific as real life. And so I'm just like, this is nice. Like horror cheers me up. So when I do that, I also find one song that I play on repeat, and I play it on repeat until I can't hear the lyrics, so I can't whatever.
It's just background
It's like,
noise.
yeah, it's a background noise. And when I wrote some of the stories, when I started writing True, I was listening to Michael Bublé's cover of "You're Always on My Mind," and I didn't realize.
Okay.
And I just had it on repeat, and then one day my partner was like, "What is that? What is that cheesy sound that I'm hearing all the time?" And then I was like, "Oh, I chose Michael Bublé." I didn't do better because then I started listening to John Mayer's Battle Studies.
No, John Mayer is that guy. I mean, I don't want to be that person.
It's an amazing album. But
He is a very talented but awful human being.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
He is.
Michael Bublé is that. Now I'm listening to John's
Let's wait a
music
minute.
as I'm writing the David story.
Why he don't date black women? Oh, I
Alright,
didn't
so
know.
we're gonna
Oh, well, I'll tell you about it later.
we're gonna open the floor for
You said it was good. You said it was chest.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't. He did not. I think it's coming. He meant it. All of it. It's just a
Yeah, so I started reading this, and this time I talked to them, she said, you know, it's true story. I said, it is. So then when I was reading it, I was like, experience, you know, we've been through life, you know. So when every story, I said, I can put it on something. I understood it better, what it was really. And then seeing that you're saying the same thing, I said, I got it right. But I waited because I'm like, these, I don't understand. And true, and then I understood what the truth is. We do have a lot of intrusions in our lives.
They are, and I just feel like they're all worthy of being put in fiction, being put on the page, being put in literature.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Thank you.
I was that. So, I'm a short story person, so your book is like right up my alley.
Okay, John.
But excuse me, I'm sorry. Can I get a little bit more of that?
That's sauce.
Sauce is sauce.
It's like ridiculous. But you did have one of the stories that continued each chapter, Untitled 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And what prompted you to do that versus like having this Untitled one and then moving on and not continuing it through the rest of the book?
I like to think that I'm mostly in control of the stories and the characters, but once in a while there's a rogue story or a rogue character who just won't go away. So I wrote Untitled 1, and I had moved on, and then I was like, so the sky falls and then what? And then I was like, well, I can't possibly talk about one sister and not the other.
I was so happy you came back again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just like I love these sisters so much, and they just wouldn't go away. So much so that I'm turning it into a whole entire novel.
Thank you.
There's no-
I need it.
Let's go.
Go away.
Oh, good.
So they stuck with
Because I want
Yeah.
to know what happened on this planet where everyone looks like
When
her
it
and
comes
why.
back.
What does that even
Like,
mean?
what did they do?
Everybody's the 6 feet.
What does that
Yes,
mean?
all shapes and
And also, what
sizes.
happened when she got on that spaceship? It just stole it.
She
Oh,
was that planet.
I love that part.
It's so for me that was like, how do you know people are friendly when they kind of mirror you? So I think this alien life was trying to tell her you're okay. Like they were literally mirroring her. Like, listen, we're good.
Right.
We're good.
All of
We're not
us.
ready to see our faces. We'll show you. But right now we're saying we're all
You're
you.
safe.
Like we're all the
Okay.
Right.
Oh wow. So
I have a
she's coming
question.
from a place where she wasn't.
Yeah.
See that? Didn't have that. Okay.
I have a question. So I know sometimes in writing you kind of make a decision and like you know how it's going to end. Like a lot of times I'll have like the last scene or line in my head, but sometimes I'm like, it happens. So when you write things like that, do you have like an end or does the art just kind of fall there? You're like, cool, let's let it live.
Sometimes I know exactly how it's going to end, like with the high heel killer. I already knew how it was going to end. But like with Untitled, I didn't know where I was going. I just had to keep trusting. And then literally I couldn't even give it a name. That's why for the whole time my author was like, my publisher was like, well, we're gonna have to give it a name. And I was like, Untitled, because I kept on sending her the stories as I was writing them. And she kept on saying, why is there an Untitled 2 that just come in? I thought we were trying to work on a name for it. And I was like, just wait. It will come. But sometimes
I never did.
it just does what it does, and I have to trust the process.
Does that happen to you often where you start off with the intention of keeping, like having one story and then kind of being drawn or compelled to continue
All the time.
all the time? So you have to hold yourself back.
All the time, because when I start, I'm not even the person that the story requires me to be when I get to the end of it. So you only ever become the writer the story requires you to once you finish it. When you start, you're like, yes, it's gonna be this kind of story, and then
Yeah.
Belle and Bonilla, the two sisters that
Werewolf
fight.
and Belle.
Lucy and I want them to have
So that is what I'm turning
revenge.
into a graphic novel.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, the werewolf colors.
Animated series. So
I need to see that.
I want her to get retribution.
yeah,
For their
I
family.
believe that they deserve
They
it.
deserve
That's
it.
one of the things. My partner, her name is Lucy. So I collect people's names and I just put them in my books and share.
Yeah.
Don't write a story about somebody with my name and they don't get like they don't get retribution. I was like, okay, I'll work on it. Sorry.
Kayon.
So
Who is that? That's such a unique name. Never heard it before. Sounds like it should be in the hood.
It does.
Or a graphic novel or a game.
Well, don't be surprised if it is a Kayon.
Shout out. It is for a graphic novel.
I think so.
Okay, what is it about Go Straight In that really like resonated with you?
For me, it was about friendship.
The truths of their friendship.
Because like because our friends don't always do great stuff, but I'm gonna defend my friends. Whatever trash they gonna get into, I'm gonna do it. I mean, I might have a discussion with them on the side, like, hey girl,
Talk about it.
I'm with you, but like but yeah, I would still pull them out of the fire. I would carry them around on my back, and
I also really like
I like that.
You phrase it as we all have to be family like that or people like that, and I love the dedication to someone who's struggling and just accepting them for who they were. I thought that was like, I have to find them. I know where they are. I have to pull them from where they are. I gotta sacrifice what I have to sacrifice. The world's going to shit, but this is who I am, and I like that genuine, authentic, genuine care for someone else.
And that was like his person. Like I feel like he really made us understand that that was his person, and they were each other's person.
Yeah.
And so to lose your person, if you can get them back in any way, shape, or form, you're gonna do that.
But he didn't. He lost himself in the process.
Yeah.
But they did get best friends.
But I
Because
think
then they were smiling at each other.
there's something powerful about it. Think about how many people who fundamentally change your ability to see colors, to see the world.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
draw, even if it ends up being a toxic
You turn into a zombie
situation,
as well.
Yeah, but you don't care.
you might be drawn into that because you don't want your world to be gray anymore.
Yeah.
Like once you've seen color, it can't be gray.
And he saw the
So-
color behind the bush.
Yes.
Right.
He knew.
Was that his lover?
No, I really love
It told the line.
men being gentle with each other as friends.
Yeah, that's what I like.
And I see it so much with my younger brother and our nephew. He's so gentle with this kid, like, and this is my nephew who's got the addiction problems and his bipolar makes him run away all the time. And every time he comes home, he like puts his head on my brother's lap, and
Right.
we're all just like, the kid is home. We don't know when he's gonna leave again, but he's so gentle with him, and I don't see that a lot with black men in books and films
Yeah.
and whatever. And I just want it to be like, yeah, they're tender with each other. They want to save each other, mostly. When they can, when they want to.
At their core.
Yeah,
Because he gave up family and everything
yeah.
for his friend. And it seemed like the thread was that people were not in a safe place typically. And so when they found safety, they were drawn to it. But he had a family who loved him as well. And he was still willing to give that up to preserve his friendship or to preserve his friend's life. The way, because he just really believes he can bring him back, but instead got slowly turned into a zombie.
Yeah, I think the situation just got completely messed up. How many of us have taken a really sad puppy home and gone, Mama, this is whoever, they're gonna come here for supper every night until their family situation, comes together. We all do that, right? And it's like, okay, the world is falling apart. My family's decided to go and hide out somewhere. I'll be with you. I just can't leave the sad puppy. Because that's just proving to the sad puppy that people will leave you when it's inconvenient
Right.
for you to be in their lives.
A lot of adoption stories in the book too.
Yeah, I feel like there's no formal adoption in South Africa, but a lot of us grew up, I think migrant labor is what builds this country, right? And a lot of us grew up with aunties and uncles lived in other people's families. This whole idea of like a nuclear family is something brand new. This idea of having grown up. I know I grew up with my mom and dad, but I think I'm a very, very rare case. And even then, I went and lived with my aunts for a while, and I lived with other people. So it's the South African way. Migrant labor really, really broke the South African family, and I never wanted to think of it as well, then we're not family.
Right.
So we may not have a lot of like formally adopted people, but I mean, I grew up with cousins who lived in our home. And they spend more time at home now in Soweto than I do because I'm here. And it's like, they're there, and my parents are their parents, and there's no saying, oh, they're not your parents. It's just the way this country was built was not set up for black people to live together in their, in their familial units. You kind of just, you make family.
That connects me to like Reconstruction in the United States, post-slavery, and the Great Migration of people moving from the South to northern cities for work, for safety, and how sometimes they never saw their family members again. And what a great sacrifice it was for some people to leave and have to go do things. You said migrant work and whatnot.
Right.
And like there's this idea that you had to make community where you were because you might literally, that might be the last time you see your mother or your grandmother or your cousin, and you have to make this new community wherever you decide to land.
Right.
I didn't anticipate hearing that at all, actually, to learn that there are parallels in that way.
I mean, I remember in high school when so I used to talk about my dad a lot because he drove me to school, and my teacher pulled me to the side and she said, I just want you to be aware of something, that not everyone has a father, not everyone lives with their mom and dad. So maybe not so much of that. And I was like, oh shit. I'm just like talking about my family situation, not knowing that it might be like a mother or a father wound for somebody else. And once I became aware of it, I was like, yeah, of course, I've got cousins at home as well who are like living with us. And there's just something about the South African family that's not And I don't think we'll ever recover from what taking my neighbor and apartheid did to us. And so and it's like, trying to like, maybe the family's just like, well, no, we actually don't have the language for it. We don't have the capacity for it. My friend, she's a lawyer, her husband is a doctor, what a cliche, and they've got these two children who go to a private school, whatever. And she's constantly like, oh no, I need to do play dates, whatever. And I said, so what? I'll come over and I can watch your kid play date, whatever that is. But you're not going to sit in a house with 6 children play dating. You're gonna go crazy. And then she was like, oh, but you don't have children. And I was like, that's okay. I'm not there for your kids, I'm there for you. Like, we're going to raise these children together. And I think she wants to be very modern about it.
Yeah.
And now she knows. She'll send me a message, she'll be like, play day Saturday, and I'll say, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
And she brings her children over to my house, and I just tell them, go play outside with the dog, make yourselves busy. Your mom's gone to do something. We just don't have the
sense of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The younger generation have spent a lot of time creating their communities. Maybe because they feel disconnected from the older generations, but they're very purposeful and intentional about creating a community that they feel supported in.
And it's not reflective of
Everybody's
human
trying to be
nature.
like, upwardly mobile. They're trying to like live in their mansions. I live in a tiny apartment, so when they bring their kids over, I'm like, don't run around here. This is not a running around apartment.
Or you would finish the whole run around very quickly.
I'm
Right.
like, go and get a book, bring it here so I can see it's appropriate, and then sit down. I don't have a TV here. There's not going to be no devices. I don't have time for that. I don't want noise. I want everybody reading.
But you're creating that memory, and now you're the extension. We've gotten away from that village mentality. My father often says, in the United States, the break of the sense of community for Black people was segregation. Was desegregation.
Yep.
He said it crippled
A lot of
us
people say that.
financially because we were able to have our own. He said it crippled us because it broke up the community because everybody was trying to get out of where they were. And so, and I've always held in my mind that sense of community because, I would walk home from school and go to my aunt's house, and they lived next door to us, and my grandfather lived on the other side, and the neighbors knew us, and if I did something wrong, Miss Shively would give me a whipping at the other end of the street, and
Daddy
I'd walk
would too.
home, and my aunt would, and then I'd have to wait for my mother to get home, possibly get another one, that kind of thing. Now, I don't go to that extreme now because people get, a little out of pocket about their children. However, my house was always the pinnacle when my boys were growing up. And we always had different children that were there. I had a boy that stayed at our house all summer. His mother never called to find out where he was. He was at our house the entire summer.
There's a boy like that in my building who just happened to follow me one day to my apartment, and I said to him, can you read? And he said, what? And I said, can you read? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, come in and have a sandwich because I've seen you just milling around here and now you followed me. And I said, sit down here, don't bother my dog, it won't bother you. The comments over there, are you allergic to peanut butter? I just like, this kid was just following me around.
We have to get back to that because children have to feel, they have to have that connection, that safety.
Yeah.
All of those things. Because we're impacting that, you giving him a space to read in a sandwich is impacting how he's gonna navigate the rest of his life. Because he's gonna remember, right, he's been watching, he's like, she's cool, she must be cool, I'm looking at her, she's cool. Let me go over here one more time to make sure she sees me. Right. Because that was the whole thing, he was trying to make sure that you saw him.
Listen, now he knew when I was coming home, and then I'd be like, okay, well, get the dog's leash, come on, let's go. My partner is like, where are you finding these children? We're gonna get arrested. I'm like, he must live in this building, otherwise why was he standing by my car?
Or close by, or close by.
That's so interesting. I was talking to my brother about this. Literally, as I was packing to go, like cleaning the kitchen, you gotta clean before you leave.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was doing a nice deep clean, and we were talking about how
Long
I was
as
like,
it's
well,
done.
I knew, because his daughter is like, I don't ever want to have kids. And I was telling him, I knew I didn't want to have kids, but it reinforced it when my mom died when I was 25, and I lived like far away from my family. I was like, I don't have a community. I don't have
Yeah.
anyone who's going to raise my kids. I'm not raising them. So if I'm not,
Wait, stop, time out.
I'm
So you already know that you're not gonna raise your child.
right. I mean, that's the thing is, I grew up in a household with 3 mothers. I grew up in a household with so many sisters. I grew up in a household where until I was like 15, I thought everyone like was my parent because someone was telling me what to do. Everyone was telling me what to do.
Oh, right, and now you have to be responsible by yourself.
By
One
myself?
person, no thank you.
No,
I'm
man.
a fantastic cook, but I ain't cooking nothing. I'm gonna take care
That
of
is true.
myself.
Exactly.
It sounds like
And I think that all
shit.
goes back to that upward mobility thing because it's like, you know, having, like, staying in your hometown or staying around your family or staying where you don't have to pay for childcare, even though it's cripplingly expensive.
Yeah.
Like, that means, like, oh, you're not gonna be something. Like, you have to be in a big city and you have to pay all this money for childcare. It's like, it's just another way of breaking that community, you know, because it's like, oh no, and some people do have great relationships with their nannies, but I don't think that has nannies, so I don't know.
But you don't want to hang out with your nanny.
Exactly. It's like that. It creates that separation of class, you know, and it doesn't give you a chance to have that community, and it's crazy how many people live like that, at least in America, for sure. I mean, all my friends, they have family take care of their kids, which I think is amazing. Like, some people look down on that, and it's just like, that's great. Like,
Well, I would
They have their
never let my
whole
mom look
family.
after my kids, but that's because she had dementia and she couldn't lose. She couldn't lose. That's different.
That's
She can
different.
co-watch, but she can't watch by herself.
We have to watch together.
But it still impacts the children nevertheless.
Yeah.
Because I took care of my mother in my home, and the relationship that my boys had with my mother was something. She had low vision, you know, she was in a wheelchair, and she had been a geriatric social worker. So she ordered a motorized wheelchair. So I had questioned when I got home and she was sitting there, and I said, who sold a blind woman a motorized wheelchair?
She was sitting
I didn't know. And
I didn't know Tommy's name.
right, I didn't know his name, but again, because of her background, she knew what she was doing, and they fell into it. Well, I come home, and my youngest son is riding around in the wheelchair. My mother is laughing and clapping. He's in the wheelchair with one leg in the air, and I said, "Oh, okay."
Y'all
I
just
see what's
driving the
going on.
wheelchair.
It's a whole lot of foolery going on when I'm not home. I understand. But when I tell you it impact, he talks about that because he doesn't talk. But when he talks about my mother, he talks about those experiences. And when they would sneak and eat all the cookies or eat all the popsicles, and then, you know, she was like, "You stool pigeon, you told on me." So it
They
impacts
bonded
them.
over that.
Right, they
Those are the
did.
things that we want to put in stories, right? Like they put us in stories and oh, it's a hot take. Oh, it smells in my hair. Bless him, but no. There's more. There's
It's
so
more to
much
it.
more,
Right.
And I love the gentleness of people even in hard times. And I think that's why Grace Train In was so important. Because I was just like, yes, we absolutely have in our town church like a substance abuse problem, and my nephew is one of those people. But I was just like, I'm not going to throw him away. He's gonna run away from home, and we will find him, and he'll be okay, and he'll be on his meds, and he'll go off his meds, and around the thing what we know, we're back to the cycle, or then he's gonna come home. We're in a cycle, but it's a cycle we're comfortable with because we know where he is, and he knows that. And this kid is so stupid because he's not made for the streets. He's not made for the streets.
Those are the
As soon
ones
as he
always
becomes a
out there.
little dirty, look who's coming through the gate.
Those are the ones that are always trying to be out there.
I smell.
He has street. Street like tendencies. That's what he has.
But we know he's gonna get a little too
Okay.
dirty and he'll find his way
That's
home.
funny.
He will find
That's
his way
a breaking
home. But
point.
My nails.
we still love him, and I just want that like tenderness of black people wherever they are in the world, whatever they're going through,
Whatever it is.
for them to be like we're tender with each other when the world isn't.
Yes. I mean, who else is gonna do
And
that?
what I liked about Ghost Train is that it wasn't as easy to identify the intruder in it.
They were both intruders.
Yeah, so it felt like the neighbors who ignored the things coming felt like intruders. The drugs felt like intruders. The ghosts felt like intruders. Whereas in the other stories, it was a clear intruder. Yeah. And in Ghost Train, it was like, is everybody here a problem?
Well, yes.
Like,
I mean, I feel like
Everybody is a problem.
He said something about how he had to find the person who made him feel like he wasn't alone. It was like, I don't know.
yeah,
Right.
because he's surrounded by a bunch of intruders.
He was an intruder and everyone else was intruding.
Yeah. It's like who put the drugs and the alcohol were also intruders, and it was like people ignoring what is happening to these people were also intruders or complicit in the intrusion.
Yeah.
And it was very Octavia. Who said it? It was very Octavia Butler. It was because I just imagined one of her books as I was reading that, but. Yeah, that's why I liked it. It wasn't as clear, and I was like, there's just a lot happening here, and you all need to come to Jesus moment because why is everyone, like you can't point to with the sisters in the world you can point to the parents who were kind to them, and you can see who was not kind. And in the stories it was easy to see, but in Ghost Train it was like they had to figure out how to survive in a world of intrusion. And that's why I really appreciate that book.
Things fall apart quickly because everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, that's how things are. As soon as you accept a little bit of chaos, you find yourself in the heart of the most chaotic thing, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm so inconvenienced. But it's like, yeah, of course, because you let so many things slide, and that's how I felt when I was writing Ghost Train in. It's like there's a lot of substance abuse in the world, like pharmaceutical substance abuse, whatever, and everybody's just like, oh, that's the way it is.
And then the one woke person is like, I feel it coming, I see it coming.
Yeah.
And I like that the person who noticed was the person that was closest to death. So he worked at a funeral home.
Yeah.
He would go train surfing, so he was constantly on the edge of death. So he was the first one to notice, like, something's not sitting right here.
It's coming.
Something's coming while everybody else is just like caught off guard.
Yeah.
Everybody's so distracted, right? Distracted with the chaos.
Or intentionally turning a blind eye to it. Because they were literally in front of them, hunched over, and they would walk past them. And it is the dream of like living in your own little bubble, because you are telling yourself that you don't have to be impacted by this thing. But it becomes pervasive if not addressed. And then it spills onto your front lawn and then eventually into your home.
And so I'll tell you the story of the ghost. That's a real thing that I experienced when I went home. I asked my mother, I was like, what is up with all of these kids that just look like they're locked in a position? And she was like, oh, those are the drug boys. The what now?
The what
and she
boys?
Said, yeah, they're on drugs. So there's a crystal meth variant called Nyambe, and they call them Nyambe boys. And I said, my mother, and I was like, how long has this been going on for? And when I got home, all of the taps outside don't have like the tap device because they're stealing everything. But everyone is a little numb to it. And I was like, this is a problem. This is going to be a major problem. And it's also boys that, I grew up with in our neighborhood. So I'm almost like, I know your mother. Your mother's a nurse. Like, what's happening? So the horror of seeing that when I went back home, I was like, okay, that is the zombie apocalypse. That's how it begins with your mother saying it's the drunk boys. Although she does have dementia, so she doesn't have many elegant ways to describe things.
But she has those moments of clarity where she's able to see that.
Well, I mean, I feel like that was also the way you were explaining that when you don't have options and hope and everything's expensive and your values aren't consistent, what are you just defining for your society, defining for your new generation? Because what are they growing into?
Yeah. But also, that's a world in which it's easy to become distracted because you're going through your everyday struggles of like, okay, I'm just trying to make sure I have money and food and all these other things. So I noticed there's an issue there. I can't even acknowledge it because that's beyond my scope and my ability because of everything wrong that's happening within my own circle.
That's what it feels like right now. So
I feel like it's commentary on the
It
world.
feels
That
like
makes
the
sense.
world, it's like there's always something else happening where you're
Yeah.
like, I'm just so overwhelmed, I can't take in one
You
more
can't take
thing.
it. But those are your neighbors. I think that's what makes the story a little bit more just harder to accept and cope with. Because it is one thing to be like, those people over there are drug boys. But these are the people you grew up with.
But
And these are their
is a drug boy
families.
now. This is when I was saying, if there were a zombie apocalypse, this is what it would look like. It would be two boys in my neighborhood that are so out of control, stealing from everyone in the neighborhood. And neighborhood going, well, what are we gonna do? We can't chase them away. They live there with their mothers. But my neighbor, the nurse, she's got no TB. Like she's got nothing because her son is an addict, and it's like 2 kids in the neighborhood. And then suddenly there's like more people, and it's horrifying. The reason why I wrote Intruders is because I was horrified with the state of South Africa. Absolutely horrified. And of course I could have written an opinion piece and put it in the newspaper here.
I am horrified.
But I was just like, it's horrific.
But doesn't that speak to what we were kind of contemplating around community?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's a
why it's so
failure of
hard.
community.
Exactly.
That's
And
why
we
it's
talk
so
about this
hard.
is what the world
It's
feels
not
like.
strangers.
We talk about
It's 2 of them.
distraction.
Nobody's gone to the mom and said,
What do
"Sis,
you need?
What
How
can we
can
Why
do?
is it?
help?
What do
You're
we
just
do?"
like ignoring
Yeah.
Right.
the house
But I
on
feel
fire
like a lot
next
of people
door.
are living, especially young people, are living in these buildings where everybody's anonymous. Like you live together, those are your neighbors, but y'all go to work, you go home, you don't know them. You know people online.
But
You don't really know
as
as
well,
well,
like our neighbor,
In
right?
cities, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Like she comes over for dinner and has dinner with my parents, but also her existence is so lonely because they're all. So I went home and I realized my neighborhood is all old people because everybody moved. We all went to go chase Mandela Street, whatever that is, and it's an old neighborhood stuck with young people that have nowhere to go. And so
But
it's
wouldn't
like.
that be an opportunity to connect with those former
Only if you're willing.
generations?
If you're willing.
Yeah.
I think one of the like
Yeah.
Also
touching
the
Twitter.
desperation, the desperation of like life in South Africa's townships, like it's really, really grim. It's a really, really grim place where it's like your parents have got their pension and we're all trying to make it. And I understand. I'm not even mad at these kids because there are no opportunities. And then somebody brings you a solution that kind of gives you that oblivion.
Yeah.
It's like oblivion over desperation any day.
It feels
When
good.
you're willing to feed the children in this new community. And it's like we move away and we're willing to build in the new community. And
I
not
feed
the
my
one-
parents and my neighbors, not just the kids in my, but I live here in Cape Town, my parents are in Soweto, and so when I am home, my parents look after the neighbors, like my dad is a very nice man, he feeds everyone, that's where I get it from. But it's just like, what are we gonna do with the neighborhood of addicts? It's a state failure because there are no
That's a public health
opportunities.
issue.
Yeah, there are no like what they call oh my gosh rehab.
But remember,
Ridiculous.
it's
None.
not a
They've
it's
shut
not a
down all
health
the
issue
social services
if
as
it
well.
doesn't impact their community. Think about the
The
opioids.
ghosts.
And COVID.
The opioid app. Have you seen Purdue? Have any of y'all seen the Purdue?
Like the movie?
The movie that talks about how the opioid epidemic wasn't an epidemic until it started affecting middle America.
Oh yeah. I mean, I ain't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
There's a 4-part
It's so
documentary.
good.
So there's
Yeah.
no rehabilitation services for people
None.
in that area or in general?
In general, I mean, so when I tried to get my nephew to rehab, it was a nightmare because he only got clean because he goes into the psych ward,
Right.
and that's in a public hospital. You can't put all the addicts in
Right.
psych wards.
Right.
Or not enough rehab centers. And my community is a lot of old people left at home with their hopeless young kids.
And it's just like, this is, I wrote into this because I was just like, I'm frustrated with the state of the country.
Is there social medicine?
Is there? Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
No, I was saying social medicine. Is there a safety net for healthcare?
No. It's really, it's and also all our public hospitals are like falling apart. Like every time I'm like, get out of South Africa, I'm like, and then go away. And then leave my nephew here in this place that's like falling apart and leave my own
Falling
people
apart.
here. And so I'm just like,
It just looks different, but we all falling apart.
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
a
the elections
society
coming up. And it's like everybody is so concerned with what's happening in their day-to-day like survival. They're constantly engaged with like, oh, these are the independent candidates. And it's just like, it's full. Yeah.
We're full.
And
That's
so
why
when I go to
distraction is
meetings,
so
I'm heartbroken.
pervasive, because everybody's in survival mode.
So we are right at time.
Oh.
This is a
I
great
know.
discussion.
It's that
This is a great
I'm honored
discussion.
and appreciate the offering
Yeah.
of your time,
Yeah.
your brilliance,
Thank you
your
so
wisdom.
much.
Thank you so much.
You said there was one person that needed their books.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Me is too.
And
Oh,
Hers was the Panama and got wet.
Yeah, I took mine to Panama and we went on a boat tour and
then
water
it's-
got in the boat and I was like, my book is wet.
no, it gives it personality.
But, well, it was molded, so I had to go. It had to go. So I got a new one.
and
So this is for Shannon,
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite book
I
is
think
signing
I
pen.
have, you can use my pen. Oh, you have a special pen.
I have my special pen.
and Jaleesa, can I get a picture of two of you out there? Where you
Raised a
And if we get like a,
by mistake.
A group picture?
Somebody had another
Delicious. I
pristine
need
lawn
to see that.
landscape.
she was like, put
They
the card
decided to
in.
put a cactus plant next to the sidewalk. So I grazed this cactus plant on my way to a music
Okay.
festival. And I pull my shirt and all the cactus plants come out. And then when I go under my shirt, it's like time. And I pull as much as I can out. And I scrape the rest because I'm not going home. I'm walking to the music festival.
Oh, this is
The
not dairy.
tines are coming out. And so whenever I put my
Coconut.
elbow down, it hurts. And I can feel the
You got a
cactus
special
blood.
pen.
They're coming out.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's so nice.
2 weeks ago.
Has somebody been taking pictures of the food because I'm counting on y'all?
I have not.
The best I can.
I am terrible about taking pictures of food.
You got the you got
I'm like,
the
the
non-dairy
red wine is
versions,
working.
and I got the dairy versions.
It was
Please take
really
pictures
good,
because I'm
wasn't it?
gonna go
The
home
red
and
wine.
nothing.
It was really good.
That was
The
beautiful.
food was delicious. The
Yes,
wine
And
was
the wine, I was
magnificent.
like, I like red now?
Yes, girl.
And
That red was
The
so
wine is
good.
South Africa they got some good wine.
I'm
Oh,
looking
is this for
forward.
Casey?
Yes.
Okay. So Casey K.
Oh, I mean,
Is
it's
this the
friends
one that,
following
alright,
the
so,
video.
Yeah, I
Panama,
dropped
the
it in
Panama
Panama.
representation.
Uh-huh.
You guys, thank you guys.